Welcome, everyone. My name is ALEC COOLEY. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a senior advisor here with Busch Systems, and as I said, I'll be leading this program, which is part of our regular Green Thinking webinar series that Busch Systems does. If you're not familiar with Busch Systems, we are a manufacturer of recycling and waste bins, among other things. If you stick around at the very end, we're going to have a product demo we invite folks to stick around for. I'll be inviting a colleague of mine to join us, but we'll come back to that at the very end. So for today's program, as the title suggests, we're going to be focusing on waste reduction from restaurants and to-go food service. It's for anyone who's ever worked in the sector or worked with the sector, there could be a significant source of waste, both with food waste, obviously, which can be a real significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, but also on the packaging side. And so that's going to be the focus of today's program. In particular, we're going to be sort of zeroing in on how reuse can be incorporated in restaurant settings to replace single-use packaging. And then we'll also be talking a lot about both up and downstream ways of addressing food waste to bring greater prevention on that side. So if we can go to the next slide. We're going to be joined by two presenters. We can flip to the next slide. As I said, we'll be joined. We're going to hear first from Kayli Dale, who is the founder and CEO with the company Friendlier, that's based out of Ontario, Canada. And then after Kayli, we will be hear from Krietta Marley, who is the vice president of product development with the Foodprint group, a consulting firm based out of New York. And I'll let both of them introduce their organizations a little bit further. But Kayli's going to be talking to us specifically about reuse systems, and Krietta is going to talk more on the food waste prevention side. We can go to the next slide. As always, we encourage as much interaction as we can with the program. Obviously, everyone's lines are muted, but we have both the chat and the Q&A functions. Just to make the distinction, we encourage share your own examples, or if you interact directly with each other. We love to hear what folks are doing. If you have a reaction to something one of the presenters says, go ahead and drop those into the chat at any point. Also know that I will be dropping some resources, examples of things that the speakers refer to, and links to different third-party resources that might be of use. So look for those all in the chat. If you have a question specifically for either of the speakers that you'd like to hear responded to live, put those into the Q&A function. That's where I'll be looking to pull those out. If they go into the chat, I may or may not see them, so just keep that in mind to use the Q&A for actual questions you would like to hear them address. So with that, if we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kayli. Again, Kayli Dale is the CEO with Friendlier, and I'll let her take it away from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Alec, and welcome everyone. So my company is called Friendlier, and our goal is to simplify the transition from single-use to reusable packaging. So I'm going to be talking all about reuse. There we go. So just a little bit on me. I'm based in Ontario in Canada. I actually started Friendlier right out of university. So my co-founder and I were going to Waterloo for engineering, and we'd spent a lot of time in manufacturing and realized how much resources and energy were going into producing products, specifically packaging, that would only be used once before ending up in landfill. And so that's where our interest started. We did a lot of traveling in our undergrad and got to experience a lot around waste reduction and circular economy in Europe. We spent some time in Sweden and the UK and saw some really interesting systems around reuse in food service settings. Nothing that we thought could directly translate to North America. Our consumers are very convenience-driven, fast-paced, a lot more emphasis on takeout here in North America, but wanted to bring those concepts and make them work for, our culture here. And that's where Friendlier started. We started in 2020. So as we started diving into the problem with single use, I just wanted to touch quickly on the problem. Recycling is not really working. Very little of what, we think is recycled is actually getting recycled. And a lot of what's labeled as compostable or biodegradable often actually can't be processed within our local facilities. So it ends up in landfill as well. And in looking at material switches, we often talk about moving away from single-use plastics. Often single-use paper is kind of the next spot to transition. But actually that's not sustainable either. Right now, a forest the size of the UK is cut down every year just to make paper packaging. We can't simply switch everything from one material to another. We're going to end up with other problems. And that's really because a lot of the environmental impact of packaging is not just on the end of life, which we often focus on. It's actually on all the steps that happen before we even see it. It's the resource extraction, the manufacturing, the transport that all happens before we actually get our hands on it. And that's where a lot of that big impact is coming from. And so the take, make, dispose model is really at the core of the problem. And by reusing and building a more circular supply chain, we can actually really address that root problem and reduce not only the waste that we're producing, but also reduce all of the resources, energy, water that goes into producing these products in the first place. And so for food service businesses, it's a sustainability win for sure with reuse. We can generally track and actually quantify the waste, the greenhouse gas emissions, the water savings that we're having when we're reusing packaging. But there's also a lot of other benefits. You maintain that high quality customer experience. We've heard a lot of feedback up in Canada. We've got, paper straws everywhere. A lot of people hate the paper straws. And that's something we're trying to avoid with reuse. We can have really high quality products and maintain that customer experience. We're also reducing a lot of waste. So we're reducing waste handling fees. And there's a lot coming down the line in terms of single-use plastic bans, EPR regulations. All of these things we can ensure we're compliant with when moving to reusable packaging. And then it's really a great way to connect with customers as well. It's something that the customers have in their hands, packaging. They can see it. It bothers them when their bins are being filled up with food packaging. And it's a really great way for businesses to connect with their customers on shared values and keep them coming back as they're returning the packaging and it's getting reused. So there's some really great business benefits on top of the obvious sustainability wins. So I wanted to share, this isn't a sales pitch, but just to give you a kind of concrete example of how reuse can work in practice. And this is how we do it at Friendlier. So the way it works for food service businesses of any type, restaurants, campuses, all different types of food businesses, they can order packaging from us by the case, and it's reusable packaging. It's durable to be reused, but they can order it kind of in the same way that they would order single-use packaging. A variety of products that are available on the market today, from takeout containers, food containers, to coffee cups, cold drink cups. There's more and more coming out every day, so lots to look out for there. Our system operates off of a deposit model, so very similar to a bottle return program that we have here in Ontario, and there's different systems across North America, but ours is digital, so customers can claim a deposit for returning their package to a return bin, and those are located at all of our participating businesses, so all of the restaurants, all the grocery stores, all of the campus locations, to make it really easy and convenient for the consumer to return, so they don't have to return to one spot. They have a number of options and they can return wherever is convenient to them. And then we pick up all of the returns from those return bins. So we'll bring them back to commercial sanitation facilities, get them sanitized, repacked, and ready to be reused again and sold again, and the cycle will continue. And then we track all of the impact because we track the different packaging throughout the supply chain. We can help the businesses share their story, share the impact that they're creating, and be able to tell their customers about all of the waste, all of the emissions and all the water that they're saving. So we see different versions of this kind of reuse system in different areas across North America and different industries, but really it's about making it as convenient as possible for the consumer to be able to really create that adoption and the right behaviors. So I just wanted to touch quickly, because sometimes we hear people say, that works there, but not for me. My business is different. Really, we've seen applications successful across various industries. I mentioned restaurants there. That's where we started with Friendlier. But we do, campuses, corporate offices, prepare meal subscriptions, event venues, hospitals, grocery, cafes. So really wide varieties of applications. Anywhere you can find single-use packaging, you will likely find benefits in switching to a reusable option as well. And this is a case study I wanted to talk about because it was a bit of a unique situation. It was 2020, probably 2021. So we were still in COVID mode, and we had a lot of takeout waste happening within, our communities. We actually had a city or municipality called Stratford in Ontario, a group of citizens and government employees, city employees, come to us and ask us to come service their community. And so we were able to make it happen. What they did was they actually brought together, they had their just community members who were consumers of those businesses reach out to the restaurants within the community, get them involved and bring them together for webinars. And so they organized it. What we found was that the restaurants were a lot more open to attending and listening because it was driven by the city and by the community members, which were their customers. And through these webinars, we were, able to create some targets. We need at least, 10 restaurants to sign up in order for us to come to the community and be able to get going. And we quickly found restaurants jumping on board to participate and be part of this and make it happen. So it was a really great success story where, the community really drove our entrance and reuse into their community. But this was one specific restaurant. They replaced all of their takeout packaging with reusable Friendlier containers. Again, it's a deposit model, so it doesn't matter how the customer's ordering, whether it be through, an Uber Eats or online through their website or over the phone. And then at any point, the customer could return their container to return bin at that location or to the other restaurants within the community. And we heard anecdotally a lot that customers were, one, really, really happy that the restaurants were doing this, but they were coming back more often because they had this, package. They would look at it and remember, oh yeah, we got that takeout at Mercer. That was delicious. Let's go back. And then they would walk back or bring it back and get something else while they were there once they had come back to the business to return. So really great example of how reuse can bring those benefits beyond sustainability. Of course, we've got our environmental impacts here. So we're certainly focused on that, but lots of other great benefits as well that came to the business in switching to reuse. And then this is scaling. I just wanted to note, so we've already as a company diverted over 2 million packages from landfill and reused them. Working with a number of large venues as well. So again, it's not just one type of business. This spans across a number of different types of businesses and, across the country, across North America. And really volumes are growing in the reuse space and starting to make a real dent in the single-use packaging waste that we're creating. And then generally speaking, I just wanted to talk a little bit about reuse best practices. So the products that we're putting into the system for a reuse system. So the packages themselves, what we don't want to do is create a product that is super overly engineered product that needs to be reused 100 times in order to be better for the environment from an emissions standpoint. So the more materials and more materials that we're putting into a product, and the heavier the product, generally speaking, the more emissions are going to be caused by that. And the more times we have to reuse it for it to actually have a positive impact on the environment from an emission standpoint. So there are life cycle analysis examples available online. You can find resources, but you want to make sure that your reuse system is going to get the products reused enough times, again, for it to have a positive impact from an emission standpoint. This is just an example of a chart there that you can see a comparison of different materials. What we have found in best practice is not to leave it to consumer choice. So we actually started as an optional program where consumers could choose to opt in or not. What we found is that it was, one, really, really difficult for the people who are working at the food service sites. It's the frontline workers that now have to explain another option to the consumers. And oftentimes, as much as consumers say they want to make sustainable choices, what they actually want is a business to make a sustainable choice for them, because they'll naturally kind of revert back to whatever they're used to or whatever they did last time. So when we did make that switch to 100% reuse with our partners, we found not only an increase in engagement, a simpler experience for the consumer, but also higher return rates, because the staff was more engaged, the customers were more engaged, and it was an easier kind of storyline to explain to everybody. And then it seems obvious, but we want to maximize the convenience for the consumers. The best way to, change consumer habits is to, minimize the changes as much as possible, try to mimic behaviors that they're already doing in some way. So we always have return bins for reuse beside, waste and recycling streams, so that it is a really easy consumer experience. They're already headed that way to drop a container where they normally would, which might be the recycling bin. And now it's easy for them to identify that they actually need to put it in a reuse return bin. So trying to make it as convenient as possible and meeting the consumers really where they're at, so that they don't have to go out of their way to do the right thing. So that was everything from me. Thank you for listening, and I'll be around at the end to answer any questions as well.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. That was fantastic. There's, I think anybody who has been watching the reuse space for any period of time knows that this is an exciting time. There have been a lot of these sort of systemic barriers to reuse going back for decades, but what you guys are doing and a lot of the other companies and initiatives, it's exciting. It's showing that this is something that is getting traction and can happen in the real world. So my hat's off to the work you guys are doing. So we have a poll question, if we can bring that up real quick. And let's see, I think everyone should see this appear on their screen now. So we'll do two questions. This one is really specifically directed at municipalities, local government, or so not necessarily restaurants, but those who are trying to support those efforts on a local government level. And the question is, do you have programs or policies to support restaurants switching to reusable packaging? So go ahead and check all that apply from those lists that you see up there. And while we're giving folks a chance to respond to that, I'll throw out a couple questions for you, Kayli. One was tracking, this is from Gabriella, tracking return rates for packaging, and you find, first, do you have a sense of what percentage of containers actually get brought back, and what the turnaround time is around that typically?
Yeah, for sure. So we track each package individually. So we can calculate return rates based on the specific customers, the specific sites. We can get really specific all the way to, you know, a certain cafeteria or a certain vendor if it's a larger site. And we see kind of a wide range. On average total, we have about a 70% return rate, which is very good for a program that converts 100% of the packaging to reuse. And we do see clients that get, you know, 99, 100% return rate. So it certainly is possible.
Yeah, great. If we can go ahead and bring up the results from the poll. It's not totally surprising, but it looks like you know, at this point, a lot of folks, probably the largest percentage, are not doing anything. But that's great to see. About roughly 14% are doing some form of financial support, for the 22 doing technical assistance, 20% who are actively working on developing initiatives. So that's encouraging to hear. And then let's go ahead and bring up this. Let's close this one, and we'll bring up the second poll if we can. And this one is going to be oriented specifically to restaurants, or even if you're not directly working with the restaurant, if you're a consultant or you're another service provider where you actually have client restaurants that you work with, you can go ahead and answer on their behalf. But the question here is, are the restaurants you're working with using reusable containers in place of single-use packaging? And you know, sort of you know, check which one of these best applies. But either are you actively using them for to-go orders, or is it more on a small pilot scale? Many cases, obviously, many restaurants do this for in-house, but not necessarily for to-go. So I'll let folks go ahead and respond to that one. And while we're at that, toss out another. Actually, my own question for you, Kayli. You kind of touched on this earlier about the types of containers, but I know some folks are really, it's the stainless steel is the direction they go versus plastic, but there are trade-offs. We all know many of the problems with plastics, but can you talk a little bit more about, again, why you made the decision to go using the plastic containers and what some of those trade-offs might be? Yeah,
so our approach is to use a product that can be accessible to everyone. So by using our products, which are made out of plastic, we can achieve a price point that is very competitive to what businesses we're using for single use, and have a low deposit amount that is accessible to most consumers, generally 50 cents. But also, you know, the main driver was looking at that material comparison from a life cycle analysis perspective, because we know we're not going to be perfect right off the bat, especially as we're driving mass adoption and really trying to scale up and replace all single-use packaging. We know that there's going to be time required for consumers to build up those habits. And so what we didn't want to do is put out a product that needed to be reused, you know, 20 times to create a positive emissions impact. We wanted something that had a lower carbon footprint from the get-go, so that we can make sure we're not harming the environment while we're trying to help it. And so, yeah, I mean, it'll be something that we continue to monitor, but from our perspective, it was the environmental piece that was the big driver for us. And our products too, I'll mention, we have done a lot of testing specifically around any leaching, material degradation. They've gone through extensive testing with different third parties to make sure. So we're not, you know, I would say you want to be very aware about what's in the materials themselves, so that you can be really confident in, you know, what you're putting out there and what you're using, especially in those food contact applications.
Yeah. There is nothing is absolutely simple, cut and dried. Here's a silver bullet. Just like with recycling, there's a lot of nuance and there's complications, but great. Let's go ahead and bring up the results from the second poll. So it looks like, you know, for the most part, only one person says that they are actively using reusables, but it's primarily as we'd expect, reusables for dine-in only. But looks like about 16% are doing reusables for small scale, at least piloting it for to-go orders. So that's great. Thanks everyone for filling that out. So let's go ahead and shift over. Encourage folks to keep dropping questions into the Q&A box. We'll be coming back and hitting these more directly at the end of the program. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and welcome Krietta Marley with Foodprint Group, who's going to tell us more about what they're doing and best practices around food waste prevention.
Excellent. Thank you, ALEC. And thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. A lot of really great questions. I'm excited. As ALEC mentioned, my name is Krietta, and I am the co-founder and VP of Product Development at Foodprint Group. Foodprint is a zero waste software and solutions company that works with businesses on their waste, specifically food and hospitality businesses. So a lot of what we're talking about today. And today I'm going to be tackling food waste specifically and the various different solutions to food waste that we've helped our clients achieve both upstream and downstream, which we'll talk a little bit about what that means. All right. So let's start by understanding the scale of our food waste problem. We all know that food waste is an issue, but how bad is it, right? We waste a massive amount of food globally. About a third of all food produced is wasted. And in the US, food waste takes up about a quarter of the material that we send to landfill. The EPA estimated that in 2018, more food reached landfills and combustion facilities than any other single material in our everyday trash. And this high level of waste has serious impacts, not only on humans and the environment, but also on our pocketbooks. So first, we have to reckon with the fact that we waste all of this food while so many people globally go hungry. Undernourishment differs among countries, but it's a really acute issue that affects pretty much every region in the world. And in the US, more than 47 million people face hunger, including 1 in 5 children. Expanding this out, about 1/3 of the global population faced food insecurity in 2022. And this is a super frustrating problem to have when at the same time we're sending so much food to landfill every day, food that could have been eaten by hungry people. And the problem is also really, really expensive. This year, the UN found that we waste $1 trillion of food globally every year. This massive cost is taken on by governments, but also by businesses and individuals like you and me. And this isn't just a humanitarian or a financial problem, but it also has an outsized impact on our environment and on our climate. All across the world, we're really rapidly running out of landfill space. And with so much of that material sent to landfill being food waste, the clock is really speeding up. And unfortunately, food waste is incredibly harmful when it's sent to landfills. Because landfills are anaerobic environments, food waste in a landfill doesn't have access to the oxygen that it needs in order to break down properly. And so as a result, it emits methane, which is a super powerful greenhouse gas. It's actually 30 times more powerful than carbon dioxide, which is what we're usually talking about when we're talking about climate change. To put this in perspective, landfills are the 3rd largest source of methane emissions on Earth. And so as a result, climate experts have ranked reducing food waste as the single most effective way that we can combat climate change. So it's a really important thing that we need to understand and figure out how we can do it. So it turns out that there are many points along the food production chain where we can save food waste from, a landfill destiny. And there are several methods for doing so that range from super easy, low-hanging fruit to a little bit more advanced. So we're going to talk about a lot of those. At Foodprint, we often use this wasted food scale that's provided by the US EPA when we're considering options with our clients. It ranks food waste handling methods from best, most positive environmental impact to worst, most negative environmental impact. And it's really just taking into account greenhouse gas emissions in this hierarchy, but it turns out that it actually lines up pretty cleanly with the other considerations that we're talking about, whether that's, human health or financial. So we work with our clients to find what we call the best, highest use for the materials that they generate, meaning that we're really trying to move those materials up the scale. So going from landfilling food to composting food, or from composting food to donating it, or from donating food to reducing or preventing it. So with that scale in mind, let's talk about the strategies. The first category of food waste reduction strategies that I'm going to talk about occurs upstream. So that means that we're reducing food ordering and food production. Upstream solutions allow you to prevent food waste from happening in the first place, and they can often have the biggest cost savings associated with them. So starting with tracking it. I like to say that you can't manage what you don't measure. So all food and hospitality businesses know that they have food waste, but they don't necessarily know where it's coming from or what it's made up of. And how can you know where to start if you don't have that information, right? So many of our clients start by tracking their waste in some way, either by using a food waste tracking software like LeanPath or Winnow, or by manually tracking wasted or donated food, or by doing a food waste audit over a set period of time. And each of these methods has its own pros and cons. So it's really about what fits best with your business's operations and your capacity. Tracking software is amazing, and it gives really, really great insight into food wastage trends. It's connected to a scale, and so it lets the user in the kitchen just set down a container of food scraps and then just press a couple of buttons to identify what the menu item or ingredient is. And if it's used well, it provides the most accurate and expansive data on which items are being wasted the most, and also when and where they're being wasted. And it can associate costs to that food waste or to the menu items, so that you can actually target your interventions to whatever is going to save the most money. It's really, really great software. But on the other hand, it can be a bit of a lift to set up the system and to customize it to your menu items and your containers. And so, of course, that also means ongoing maintenance. And if the system isn't adopted by everyone in the kitchen, you might not necessarily be getting a complete picture of your food waste, and you may be working off of inaccurate data. So if you have less capacity, more limited tracking or a food waste audit can sometimes feel like a little bit of a lighter lift. So you can either focus on tracking on a limited area or category of food waste, like only tracking prepared food or donated food, only tracking food from events. Or you can focus it on a limited period of time, like over a 1 day or a 1 week audit period. It's a little bit more manageable that way. But if you can implement a tracking system, it's got a huge payoff. A Champions 12.3 study reviewed 114 restaurants across 12 countries and found that nearly every site achieved a positive return. The average restaurant saved $7 for every $1 invested in reducing kitchen food waste. And within just 1 year, the restaurants reduced food waste from their kitchens by an average of 26%. So huge, huge impacts. And almost all of them recouped their investment at some point. One of our first clients is a food market and a luxury grocer, and they actually used their internal food inventory system to track their waste, not only by type, but also by department and by waste reason. And they found out that they were wasting tens of thousands of dollars of food every month. And by making a couple of changes around ordering and stocking, FIFO, production, and also their disposal methods, they were able to curb this waste a ton and save truly thousands of dollars every month. So putting in a little bit of that work has a massive, massive payoff. There are also some tried and true methods for reducing overproduction with or without waste tracking data. And often the first place that you can start is menu planning. So you can create a smaller, more limited menu, which means ordering fewer ingredients, and also allows you to kind of more closely monitor your production levels. And if you cross-utilize ingredients or even sub-recipes on your menu, you're much less likely to age out those ingredients or those materials. We also recommend fostering a culture of selling out. So instead of producing way, way more than you're ever going to need to have this abundance, You only make the amount that you expect to sell, and then when it's done, it's done. You can incorporate more plant-based options into your menu, which then avoids prep waste from animal bones and off scraps. And one of the biggest changes that we've helped one of our hotel clients to make is decreasing the production buffer on their events. So they usually produce between 8 to 12% more food than is needed, kind of based on the head count of their events. And they've told us that that's kind of a standard buffer that most businesses use. But as part of a zero waste events program that we created for them, they were able to limit that percentage to just 2 to 5%, and reported to us that there was basically no issue, virtually no one noticed, and there weren't any effects felt by the attendees. So making a couple of those changes on the back end and reducing that assumed overage really resulted in not only a reduction in food waste, but also a reduction in the labor that it took to prep those menu items that didn't even end up getting used. You can also use data from food waste tracking, or frankly, even anecdotal data, to reduce or eliminate menu items that tend to get left over, either because they're less popular or because they're served at a time when people aren't so hungry. So that same hotel client that we worked with on events found that the pastries that they were serving at snack breaks were often wasted because they were also serving breakfast and lunch. So people just weren't super hungry. And so they were able to eliminate those pastries and then just serve coffee during the breaks. And one of our bakery clients looked at the breads that they were always donating a ton of time and time again. And they were able to reduce the pars for those items and then get a little comfortable with, like, if they did sell out, it was sold out. So a lot of really great methods to just kind of curb that production so that you're not generating it in the first place. Another way to reduce food waste is to change where and how you source your ingredients. So you can work with vendors that rescue ugly or imperfect produce that don't necessarily meet aesthetic retail standards. So companies like Imperfect Foods and Misfit Markets are great options. Or you can work with gleaning organizations who rescue food on farms that would otherwise be left on the field and tilled under. And the next place to look is service planning. So plate waste or post-consumer waste makes up about 70% of food waste at food service establishments. So there's a huge window of opportunity here. A lot of this falls under either how you're serving the food or how much food you're serving. So in terms of strategies, you can fire items to order, especially if it's high value items like meat or fish. You should definitely avoid self-service and buffet style, not only because people tend to take more on their plates than they actually want to eat, but also because staff served allows for more safe to donate food at the end of the night, which is super important. And if you do need to do a buffet, we definitely recommend using smaller trays or bowls for the same reason, because once it's set out and broken into, it's much, much more difficult to donate. You can also right-size portions based on patterns or tracking data. So if you can get a really safe and realistic average portion size, then you're going to have much less plate scrapings. So we've incorporated literally all of these methods into our zero waste events program with our hotel clients, and have found a ton of huge success in reductions on post-consumer waste in events. And then they've applied that kind of across their operations as well. So it sounds like a lot of work. Does all of this work save you money? It absolutely does. Reducing this waste can cut a restaurant's costs by between 2 and 6%. Wasting less food not only means wasting less money on ingredients, but also wasting less money on the labor to produce that food and the hauling costs to take it away. If you're not generating that food waste, then you don't have to pay for it to be hauled away. So there are obviously some obstacles with these solutions. In a lot of cases, these methods are not all or nothing. You don't just have to jump headlong into it. You can kind of dip your toe in and try them out first. So that's what we often recommend with our clients. So the first one is, a lot of our clients have this abundance mentality in service. So they don't want a client a customer to walk in and not see, you know, a mountain of bread, or to be told that something is out. So we often kind of wean them off of that mentality and get them comfortable with the selling out mentality by just starting with 1 or 2 menu items, maybe even slightly less popular menu items, having them only produce the amount that they need, and seeing how their customers adapt when they just sell out of items. Another issue that we've heard about is kind of a marginal interest in plant-based menu items. It obviously is growing and it's a little bit regional, but similarly, dip a toe in. We're not asking our clients to move to 100% plant-based tomorrow, but instead to offer a mix of plant-based items and meat options, and kind of see how their clientele gravitate toward the different options. There is definitely a concern about added labor in tracking food waste, and also in difficulty in motivating staff to track. This is definitely an obstacle that we face with a lot of our clients. First of all, we want to make sure that the system that they set up for food waste tracking is as easy as possible. We don't want to add a bunch of extra steps to an already really busy shift for staff. One of those ways is to really focus just on tracking highest value items. So forget about prep scraps. We don't need that data. We understand that it's not as high value as prepared food. So really just focusing on tracking prepared food waste. You can also create incentives for tracking, whether that's, you know, a raffle or moving toward a goal and having a party. And really importantly, sharing your insights with the team. So your team is the one who's doing the food waste tracking. They're the one who's putting in that extra effort. And it's really valuable for them to know, first of all, that that data isn't going nowhere. It's actually being used to create solutions to reduce waste. And also involving them in deciding on those solutions and to make those decisions can really empower them and make them understand that, you know, they're a big part of this, and they're what's really going to make the difference. And finally, there is concerns around an added labor for plated service, for, you know, individually plated service as opposed to self-service or buffet. We hear that a lot, but we have actually found that when our clients run a cost-benefit analysis, or even just, you know, like look at the costs associated with having a station that's manned by staff or individually plating, the costs of that labor versus the costs of producing food that ends up getting wasted, plus the cost of ingredients and hauling, it really nets out, and in most cases tips toward reducing the food waste. So you're actually saving money by going individually plated. So the next strategies focus downstream. So that's diverting leftover food that you do end up with away from landfill. There are still ways to save money here that I'll be talking about, and regardless, you're going to make a huge impact. So one amazing strategy is to sell leftover food at a discount. You can do that the traditional way, like, you know, dollar day olds, but you can also use apps like Too Good To Go, which notify users of discounted food deals in their area and connect them to you. Our client in New York City, Bread's Bakery, offers a $5 surprise bag on Too Good To Go that they fill with basically whatever they have too much of toward the end of the afternoon. Otherwise, these items would need to be donated or composted. So this is a really great way to eliminate waste while also opening up a new revenue stream. And any plates, or rather spent scraps that you have, ingredient scraps, can actually be repurposed or upcycled into other menu items. One of our amenity office clients does a ton of food service. They serve 1,000 to 2,000 people every single day. And they use their old bread for panzanella or for bread pudding. Another hotel client uses spent coffee grounds and fruit prep scraps in their cocktail program, which is really fun. And pretty much every single one of our clients uses their meat bones and vegetable scraps for stock. So upcycling is another way to, you know, get another life and even another dollar out of your ingredients. And whatever you can't sell should then be donated. It's important to set up a relationship with 1 or even 2 food rescue partners ahead of time even if you don't think you need it, so that they're ready to step in whenever you do have leftovers. Most of our clients tend to work with a mix of local organizations like food banks and churches, and then also larger national organizations like a company called Copia, which does the logistics to get leftovers to areas that need it the most. And the good news is that many of our clients have actually saved money by donating. There are some really great tax incentives in the US for food donors, which can offset the cost of donation pickups and ultimately end up costing a lot less than hauling that food to landfill. Some businesses do tend to be nervous about liability around donating food. We do hear that from people kind of all over. But most countries, including the US, which we have information on here, actually protects donors from liability. And so we do have some resources on this that we're going to be sharing as well. And food donations, frankly, are going to be going from a nice to have practice to something that's required by law in more and more places every year. Those of you who are situated in California are probably very familiar with this. California's SB 1383 law now requires food businesses, which includes restaurants, hotels, and caterers, to donate their excess food instead of throwing it out. And it's not just California. In France, grocery stores have been required by law to donate their excess produce since 2016. So we're going to start to see more and more of these laws in most regions in North America and kind of beyond as the years go on. Okay, so after all this, you're still going to have some inedible scraps that need to be processed. So that's where recycling methods kind of come in. Animal feed is the optimal option if you do have that available in your region. And that's because the food is still eaten, and it prevents the growth of crops that are just for animal feed. Your other options are composting and anaerobic digestion, which these options kind of tend to be tied to what you have available in your region similarly, but both can be really, really excellent options. And even our clients who are required by law to get their food waste collected separately, they can often drag their feet around moving to separating compost or separating for anaerobic digestion because they're worried about additional costs. So the bad news is, as it is right now, composting food waste is still more expensive to a restaurant than landfilling it in a lot of regions. And this is super frustrating. We're really getting more and more laws that are mandating restaurants and other food businesses to compost, but it means an added cost for them. So that's really frustrating. But the good news is that some regions in North America, including California and New York City, are adopting policies to make compost collection cheaper than trash collection. So to actually put financial incentive behind it. And as it says here, the tipping point will eventually happen everywhere as landfill space kind of continues to shrink. And as composting and 80 facilities continue to get invested in and really scale up and capacity scales. So I've already talked about some of the obstacles to downstream strategies, but there are more, obviously. One of them is having, a lack of compost haulers or donation partners in your region. Some of the places that we work with are on remote islands in the Caribbean or Hawaii, and there are less options when it comes to composting or animal feed or anything like that. So the first solution that we talk about with our clients is to reduce the waste, right? So give your leftovers to staff first or find a donation partner in your region so that you can just curb the material that needs to go into the bin. And then if you don't have access to any composting or anaerobic digestion partners in your area, you can look into on-site composting systems. So you can get equipment on-site that actually processes the organic waste in-house. Another challenge is the tendency to start producing overage for secondary market sales or donations. So we do see this with some of our clients where they get really excited about the new revenue stream or they get excited about donating, and we start to actually see their donations increase over time. And the thing is, we actually ideally want secondary market sales and donations to decrease over time as you're learning more about your overproduction and reducing that overproduction. So we ask our clients to keep a really close eye on their production PARs and use their tracking data to make sure that they're really only donating or reselling their true overage and not producing for it. Another thing that we hear often is, we actually don't really have food waste, so we're not going to have anything to donate. Like we're going to look at the end of the day and there's nothing. And there are some discrete cases where that is true. But generally, we ask our clients to just start by tracking their food waste or auditing it. Often we find that there are a lot of surprise food waste areas that are kind of overlooked or not even considered when we're thinking about overproduction or food waste. And so again, if you measure it, you can actually manage it and you can actually identify areas where you can improve. And finally, we have some people who have food waste haulers or processing equipment that can't accept certain items. So maybe they can't take meat or bones or pineapple cores or dairy or something like that. So how do we mitigate that? First, we sometimes recommend that our clients find a secondary organics hauler that can take those materials. So we have a couple of clients who have biodigesters on site that can't take meat or bones. And so they set up a separate relationship with a compost hauler who can take those materials so that they're still diverting them. If they can't do this, then you might need to consider your purchasing or your operations. You basically need to go back to the drawing board and reduce those items as much as you can. So we have one hotel client who has a very small, amazing farm who takes their food waste for compost, but they can't take meat or bones. And so all of those meat and bones that they produce on site need to be trashed, which is really not an ideal situation. So what we did with them is we put a much bigger focus on increasing their plant-based menu items, since we know that all plant-based items can be composted with their hauler. So reducing those items that would inevitably have to go to trash. All right, so I know I just listed a million different methods, but as I said, it's really about what works best with your operation and your capacity and frankly, your team's appetite. So just starting with a couple of these strategies can really start to make a huge difference in your waste and also, frankly, in your bottom line. All right, thanks everyone.
Great. Thank you, Krietta. Lots of great information there. What I find particularly exciting is I feel like when we've had these kinds of programs going back historically about how to deal with food waste, it's always been sort of downstream focused, and it's exciting to really understand how, with more planning and this wheel is being invented, and we have a lot more resources and knowledge about how we effectively do the upstream waste prevention, which, as you pointed out, is where we really get the bang for the buck, both financially and with greenhouse gases, et cetera. Let's go ahead and we're going to jump to Q&A. We had a last poll, but I think I want to try and make sure we get to questions that we have coming in. So I will throw out a couple that have come in right off. I'll start with you, Krietta. This is a question from Brianna. How have restaurants reacted to your advice about the right size portioning, about and sort of perceptions that customers might have about being, if not robbed, they're getting less than what they expected? How have restaurants reacted when you talk to them about that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Actually, I've been kind of surprised by this. We will often get asked about right sizing portions more readily by our clients. So that's often kind of the first thing that they're thinking about is plate size. And so they're really excited about that. It's really more the menu planning and the service planning and cross utilization that they haven't really thought about yet. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them know their client base really well, know their customers, but they're not necessarily taking the risk of meeting those portions or meeting that production level as opposed to going way overboard. And so we have pretty much leaned on our customers, or rather on our restaurant clients' expertise around their customers, plate size, portion size, as opposed to telling them, hey, you need to cut it by 25%. We don't know exactly how much they need to cut it. They more likely know already.
Yeah, great. Kayli, for you, there have been a number of questions coming in, but can you just sort of reiterate again, for your company at least, where is your service area? You're based out of Ontario, Canada, but where are you available and how are you expanding? Or can folks expect you coming to other areas in the near future?
Yeah, I love this question. Happy to chat. So we're based in Ontario. We started 4 years ago. So we've been growing quickly. We service Ontario, Quebec, BC, and then Alberta as well. But we're launching in the US next year in the Northeast. So if you're interested, even if we're not in your region, feel free to shoot a message over because we are looking for that feedback of where should we go next. So that's always welcome.
Great. Another question from Doreen, and this is one that I know kind of gets to the crux of for a lot of businesses. But just the price comparison, when you look at what the holistic cost is for single use versus reusables, I know a lot of this, we're still sort of proving the concept and building out the economic models for this, but can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, the price comparison for sort of a typical situation?
Yeah, so the way we charge is a fee per use plus a deposit, which gets passed along to the consumer and they can claim if they return it. So the real price for the business is the fee per use. Ours ranges from 25 to 65 cents, depending on the size and the product itself. But we do see we're very cost competitive with whatever we're replacing. In many cases, we're cheaper than whatever our partners were paying for single-use packaging.
Excellent. Good. We'll do another food-oriented question for Krietta. This was one from Frietta asking how are mixed dishes leftovers being tracked and audited? How does that process work with, she gave the example of soup, which may be required multiple veggies, or a pasta dish that may require mixed sauce. Are they made from scratch?
Sure. So there are a couple of different ways that we track it. I don't know if we're talking about like tracking the costs associated versus tracking just the food in general. But yeah, we will often, if they have a food waste tracking software, it's often set up with those sub-ingredients. So it works a lot like inventory management software, and sometimes it even builds off of a restaurant's inventory management software. So it already has all of those sub-ingredients basically factored in. And so that's how you're able to kind of cost out those items. Often a lot of restaurants are already costing out their dishes anyways, because they need to know how much to charge for a cup of soup or a bread loaf. And so we're really building off of a lot of that data that they already have. And then again, we want to make this as easy as possible. So if they haven't done that and we're kind of working from scratch, we really just want to use some really obvious, again, like low-hanging fruit of, okay, we know that meat costs you guys a lot. We know that fish costs you guys a lot. Let's focus on those items and whatever contains meat or fish. So really kind of meeting the restaurant where they're at. Got it.
Good. I know we're at the hour basically. Let me put out one last question for this one would apply to both of you. And that's, from a local government perspective, how can local governments better support businesses on both sides? Are there ways that from your experience that they can have the most impact, either incentivizing or providing resources for both the reuse and the food side? I guess, Kayli, if you want to go first on that.
Yeah, I think helping to share the message in general, coming from us, it's a sales pitch. Coming from someone else, it might be easier for us to get in touch with folks. Like what I mentioned happened in Stratford. It was the community that brought in the businesses, and then we could have more of kind of a joint conversation as opposed to us having to try and go sell to them. So that honestly helps a lot. And then, any incentives, we've seen some locations that will give some sort of subsidy to help the businesses get started and help decrease any risk associated with that, or, specific features where they're going to feature the restaurants or businesses that are doing these things to help kind of build up the benefits and decrease the risk for the businesses to try something new.
Yeah, I would definitely say the same. I think that when it comes to downstream, we're really talking about incentives. And I spoke a little bit to this toward the end, but basically getting composting less expensive than sending to landfill is going to be the first way to get all of these businesses who actually want to do the right thing to be able to afford to do the right thing. So it definitely comes through incentives on the downstream. On the upstream, it really does come down to, or it really starts with, knowledge and access to knowledge. So helping restaurants have access to these different planning resources, but it can also come down to incentives as well, and using tracking software, incentivizing that, and basically making that transition to being a little bit more knowledgeable about food waste a little bit easier.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I know we do have more questions that have come in, but out of respect of everybody's time, I think we're going to go and close it now. Do know that a couple of things. One, the recording and these presentation slides will both be available on our website. We're also going to capture the sort of best of from the chat box, and where we can get some sort of written response to some of the questions we were not able to get to. All of those will be posted on our website, and we'll be sending out an email to anybody who registered for this program in the next day or two. So you'll be able to come back and find all these great resources. The other thing that there are a number of resources that I know Krietta and Kayli both had referred to in their presentations, and we were planning to drop some of those into the chat, but weren't able to. But that is one other thing that we'll have available with the recording is an actual link to some of the different organizations, different resources that are out there, both supporting reuse as well as food waste prevention. So lots of great information, and look for that email in the next day or so. If we can go to the next slide, just a couple heads ups. As I said, to point out, we do have the recording will be available in the next day or so, so look for that. I also want to point out, with this webinar series, we've touched on both the reuse and the food waste topic on several past programs, and so I'm just signing those up here on our websites. Some of these past ones, the recordings and presentations from both of these, or from these previous programs, are also available that you can find on our website, which, if we go to the next slide, this shows you basically where you can find these on our website, or you can click on that QR and it will take you to the archive of those. With this webinar series, we touch on a whole range of topics, all in one way or another involved with waste reduction. So for other topics not specific to restaurants and hospitality, you can find some great programs archived there as well. And I think we have one or two more slides. This is a little bit of a separate topic, but for those of you with local government or with colleges and universities, I want to give a shout out for a new report that we, Busch Systems, is getting ready to publicize in the next week, along with several partners, including Kirk, HE Campus Race to Zero Waste, National Wildlife Federation, and Zero Waste Campus Council. And this is where we've worked with colleges and universities across the country to better understand how they're doing different practices that have been shown to improve diversion rates, from centralized collections that give more, that hand over more of the responsibility to waste to individuals, and bin and signage design standards that can help improve programs. So with this project, we've done surveyed schools across the country to better understand how those trends are being put into place, and some of the lessons learned. we will be partnering with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition, to do a webinar on November 7th that will be, we'll be going through the full results from that project. And we'll also have the actual report available to share at that point. And this QR here will take you to where you can sign up for that webinar coming up on the 7th. And I think we have one more slide. And that is just simply, we will be sending out a survey after the program when you sign off, and we would love to get your feedback. If you have comments, anything you want to share with either Krietta or Kayli, the survey will be your opportunity to share that feedback directly. And with that, we're at the end of the official program. But as I mentioned at the start, I do want to finally thank Krietta and Kayli. This is great. I appreciate your participation. And so now we're gonna turn off our cameras in a second, and I'm gonna invite my colleague Sarah Hawthorne, who is with our sales team. And as I mentioned, Busch Systems, this webinar series is supported by our business side, providing quality waste and recycling containers. And so my colleague Sarah is going to come on, and she's, for those who want to stay on, I'm going to talk about some of the products we have, and including ones that can work for reuse and food waste collection systems. So Sarah, if you're there, I'll let you take over. Great, and you're muted.
I'm sure that would help.
Yeah, great. Good to see you, Sarah. I'll give you the handoff and take it from here.
Sounds great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again to Kayli and Krietta for such an amazing, for being such great panelists with some fantastic information. I hope that you all found this webinar to be extremely beneficial with many takeaways for you. I am one of the business development managers here at Busch Systems. I've been with Busch for 7+ years now. And not only, I specifically work within the public admin, hospitality, and IT verticals. And not only does Busch Systems love to be involved in regards to having to help find suitable collection containers for you, but we do thrive in being involved in the educational factor as well. So we have amazing resources, not only our webinars, but of course our sustainability advisors that are also more than happy to jump in and help in assistance in any type of program. So with that being said, basically I'm just going to do a very quick overview in regards to the products that we do have available, all the way from reusable to organics, waste, front of house, back of house, even event type of containers as well that would be suitable for any type of collection need. So as Kayli did mention, we truly thrive in our sustainability impacts, and we here at Busch only manufacture our containers with North American source materials, so nothing overseas, as well as we are happy to announce that we have started to transition a lot of our containers over to 100% PCR content, which we are very happy about. And this container here is called the Outlaw. This is our indoor version that does have front signage available as well, which is very hard to see. I'm just trying to make it. So we always suggest the more coloring, the more signage, labeling, messaging to keep a uniformed look across the board is extremely suitable, especially in a public setting, restaurant environment. So this right here is a 50-gallon container that is extremely popular within any type of setting. It's got a large capacity as well as restricted openings. So this right here is your full, but we also have a smaller circle or mixed opening as well. We stock only right now in the blue and black, but we are definitely working on more colors to be available. I do just like to highlight that we do have body signage available as well, and can customize. We do have an in-house graphics department that can take any type of specific design, logos, icon, verbiage, and we can definitely make that in-house as well as print for ease of service. So this right here, just to kind of showcase, this is what a body signage would look like. Extremely beneficial, especially when you're in a multicultural environment. So the more coloring, the more icons would be helpful in regards to reusable, recyclable food scraps, whatever you're collecting. As well as we have the outdoor version, which is our Renegade. It is a canopy option with a tethered lid, as well as a rubber ballast that comes with it as well. That's made out of 100% recycled rubber. So again, these containers are made with 100% recycled content, and you do have the option to either have one opening or all four, just again, depending on your collection. Very, very popular, great price point, durable, as well as here's the tethered lid. I don't know if it's going to see or not. We move on. I'm kind of working relatively fast. I know everyone's been on for quite a while here. This is a fantastic option in regards to any type of programs that's more of an event style or reusable collection as well. This is called our Mosaic. I'm just trying to see if you can see the full body. Casters are available as well for ease of transport, as well as internal liners. So this container comes as a single, double, or triple. You can connect them through the bodies as well. And restrictive openings. We have any type of color, black, blue, gray, green, with slot and circle openings that are very popular in regards to reusable cups, cutleries, dishes, just kind of depending on your environment. But switch, a very easy switch of signage. So if you even have a different type of event that you're looking to switch out, you're not having to repurchase a whole new system. You can actually just switch out the panels. It's at a 32-gallon capacity and is marketed all around as well. So again, very great for events, wheeling in and out, customizable, just to get that messaging across. This is the Mosaic. We also have our waste watchers here that we are also coming out with 100% PCR content that we're very excited about. We have two different types of capacities. We mainly deal with your 32-gallon as well as all the way up to a, this is 23-gallon all the way up to a 32-gallon. So we do have a lot of customers that do like to have the larger recycling to promote that. But in regards to customizing, if you want to collect any type of reusable products, we can put them on the signs and the labels as well. We have a lot of customers that use our containers for reusable materials, such as Mars is a very large manufacturing facility, and they actually have a 16-stream station to go through their whole facility, even from small foils off the manufacturing line to plastic parts that they can repurpose within their manufacturing settings, which is really cool. So this is the type of container that they use. Some customers hot stamp or add front body decals as well, just to kind of really hone in on that specific messaging. This is really great for front of house, back of house, extremely durable. The configuration options are endless as well. So if your program changes, again, you're not having to repurpose a whole new system. It's modular, you can add and take away as well. And that is our waste watchers. This container, I know Krietta was speaking in regards to the food scraps collection. I know California has an amazing tiered collection in regards to their organics or composting collections. So this is our TRC that is actually made from food grade materials. So it's actually acceptable to collect food in it. It is at a 30 2-gallon capacity with a dome lid with handles as well for an ease of servicing. So it's extremely durable, as well as can be used for not only recycling, but food scrap donation or food donations as well, if that's something of interest, or if you have that program put into place. Dome lids as well for transport. For front of house, more restaurant style front of house containers. These are our most popular containers for food service settings. This container is our quart side. It's a metal powder coated steel container that comes with casters, as well as a tray recessed area. So this is at a 32-gallon capacity each. As well as ease of servicing is very important within our development and R&D processes. We've truly taken into all considerations of not only materials, but servicing, aesthetics, price. We really do take into all those factors. These components are either zinc or stainless steel to avoid any type of rusting for the longevity reasons, as well as you can see here, this kind of has a lip that goes over top of the lining. So if there is a material that's kind of thrown in, this kind of pushes it through to the liner, so you're not having the contents fall through. Very strong magnet as well. I was trying to make that a little bit quieter. So this is a really great option. It also comes in a single and a double. So if you kind of start off with recycling and waste, and then you want to start your organics collection, you could also get a single container to match and marry beside as well. This right here is our Sasante container. It is available in a double and a triple. It's a melamine slate board with a powder coated metal steel lid. We have 2 different options for a tray area or a sign frame as well. Just again, to have that uniform look for any type of collection that you're doing at your facility, and the front door access at the 32-gallon capacity as well. We can also customize. We have a lot of customers that put, if you have another container that's for reusable or cutlery only, we do have a lot of customers that add onto body decals anywhere on the container to help in the messaging and making the point across. This is our spectrum. We have seen a lot of customers, for example, Adidas uses this type of container for reusable lanyard collection at specific events. But this container can marry and match very well with these type of containers. So if you do bring on the reusable collection, again, you're not having to repurpose a whole new container. You can add on to products that would be suitable for both aspects of collection. So we have the sign frames, the restricted openings. This is a 24-gallon cube that has an internal liner as well. So it's an ease of servicing. So you can take your liner out and dispose of where you need to, wash it out, put back. We have the front labels that you can also customize into any specific. We've had doctor's offices collect, or optometrists collect use glasses, film containers, whatever the collection need is, we can definitely make that happen. As well as I have one container here that is suitable for also indoor and outdoor, which is very popular. Thank goodness for casters. This right here is our Vision. It is made out of recycled lumber. Extremely durable. It's UV and rust protected as well. The customization aspect go all the way to the posts, the panels, even to the capacity. So if you want to have a larger recycling versus a smaller trash, we could also do that as well. With the door signage and the labels being customizable. We've had customers that like to also engrave any type of logos, but we really truly in the design factor and make sure that all of our components are secured, especially for an outdoor setting. So you wouldn't have to worry about that signage slipping or moving or fading. These are 23-gallon liners that are ease of service. You can take them out, service them, and replace them as well. This is also very important that it's designed with an internal bracket for less chances of cross-contamination as well. And this is our Aspire vision, but we also have different types of recycled number containers as well. So I do apologize for the rushing through, but I just wanted to get all the containers that would be most suitable and beneficial to you, and hopefully you enjoyed this afternoon's webinar.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. And I believe we will call it there. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.